Chapter 4. The next morning, she calmly and composedly requested to go home, and he, surprisingly, agreed. He said that as long as she satisfied his heart and his desires, he would give her time to adjust to everything and would temporarily set her free. So, since he couldn't take her to Japan for his mission just yet, Tommy agreed to let her leave the heavily guarded Bunkyo branch for a while. Seeing her return safely, everyone at Thunder Corporation was overjoyed. However, not wanting to cause any disputes, she brushed off her family's concerns and questions with a simple "I'm fine," and made it clear that she didn't want to talk about it. She allowed herself to return to her normal life, continuing to breathe, live, and work. Since leaving the Noah cartel branch, that man seemed to have disappeared. After half a month of living on edge, her chaotic mind finally began to calm down. She felt her life slowly returning to its original track. Glancing at her watch, which indicated it was nearly 5 o'clock, Soraya knew it was almost time to get off work. She pulled out 2 documents from a stack she had just retrieved from the CEO's office. "Secretary Lin, come here for a moment," she called out, looking up. "Yes." Secretary Lin, sitting nearby, immediately stood up and quickly approached her upon hearing her voice. In Thunder Corporation, the only person she feared more than President Thunder was Soraya. Besides being her direct supervisor, the main reason was that no matter how well she did her job, Soraya never showed her a kind face. This didn't mean Soraya disliked her. It was just that, except for Thunder Corporation insiders, her beautiful boss always wore a cold expression towards outsiders, earning her the nickname of the Ice Queen in Thunder Corporation. Secretary Lin. Standing before her desk, Secretary Lin waited respectfully for her instructions. "Take this document to the HR department and have them issue an announcement." Soraya handed her the document. "Yes." Secretary Lin nodded and took it. "Also, take a look at this and see if you're satisfied with it." Soraya handed her another document. Seeing the contents, Secretary Lin was shocked. It was a document for her pay raise and promotion. Secretary Lin was both surprised and delighted. "My recent leave was a test for you, and both the president and I were very pleased with your response and quick thinking. So I decided to adjust your position and salary." "Thank you, Secretary Lin." Secretary Lin looked excitedly at her beautiful, expressionless boss behind the desk. However, as she looked at Soraya, she felt that her usually cold and aloof boss seemed to have changed a bit. Soraya was still as beautiful and charming as ever, still the center of attention, still indifferent to people, and still treating others coldly. But since returning to work at Thunder Corporation, she had become more silent and even harder to approach, rarely speaking outside of business matters. Previously, she would occasionally go out for lunch during her breaks. But now, unless accompanied, she wouldn't leave the office until it was time to go home. "This is only fair, but I do worry that one day you might take my job away," Soraya joked, something she rarely did. Seeing her rare smile, Secretary Lin was stunned. "Secretary Lin, you look so beautiful when you smile," she blurted out. "You?" Secretary Lin's words left her slightly stunned. With the promotion and pay raise, along with seeing Soraya's beautiful smile for the first time, Secretary Lin was excited and started chatting casually. "Secretary Lin, I think with your beauty, you should smile more often. You'd captivate so many men." "That would only bring trouble," she responded simply, her smile fading. "That may be true, but it would give you many choices. Look at your 4 brothers, all married, and you're the only one without a partner." Secretary Lin continued chatting. "I think it's because you rarely smile, so the good men are scared off by your cold demeanor." Realizing she had misspoken, Secretary Lin's face turned red with embarrassment. "Is that so?" Soraya seemed indifferent. "Say, Secretary Lin, I didn't mean it that way. I mean..." Secretary Lin quickly tried to think of a way to cover her words. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. "I mean, those cowardly, useless men don't deserve you." "Oh!" Soraya glanced at Secretary Lin's animated expression and then looked out the window. "I think someone as beautiful, stylish, and capable as you should have a strong, powerful man to match." "All right, enough." Soraya abruptly cut her off. The phrase strong and powerful unconsciously reminded her of him. Secretary Lin? Secretary Lin looked at her, puzzled. Taking a deep breath, Soraya tried to calm her affected emotions. You're at work, not here to chat. Do you want me to cancel your promotion and raise? Now hurry and take those documents to HR and finance. Why are you still standing here? Go, she commanded sternly. Yes, I'll go right away. Secretary Lin, startled by Soraya's quick change of mood, hugged the documents tightly and hurried out of the office. Once Secretary Lin left, Soraya slumped weakly into her leather chair. Closing her eyes, she gently rubbed her chest, which felt heavy and nauseous. She had thought she had completely forgotten about Tommy, but just a few words from Secretary Lin had easily brought back memories of those days. Sighing softly, she massaged her temples. She didn't want to remember anything about him. But why, even now, could she still vividly recall his cold, stern face? She remembered everything clearly. But after a month had passed, Soraya began to wonder if it had all been her imagination. Because as of today, a month had passed, and he had vanished like thin air. Soraya was happy with this result, relieved she no longer had to worry about his appearance. But, in the midnight breeze, under a lonely streetlight, Tommy, dressed in black, sat silently in a cafe opposite Thunder Corporation, drinking cold black coffee. His cold eyes watched every movement in the building across the street. He had returned from Japan 10 days ago, but hadn't found a chance to approach her again. He could only watch from afar as she left Thunder Corporation, returned to her nearby apartment, and saw the car that followed her drive off quickly after greeting a van parked in front of the building. Her family was carefully protecting her, and his family was keeping him isolated. He knew she wouldn't like him visiting her, nor did he want her family to know about them, but his patience was wearing thin. He couldn't let her pass by him every day without a word or a glance. Tommy, why don't you go see her? Kai, sitting next to him, voiced his confusion. Tommy kept his gaze on the building, saying nothing. Don't you really want to see her? Why don't you? She's being followed. He cut Kai off without looking at him. Is that a problem? Kai was genuinely puzzled. After the previous lesson, he understood Soraya's importance to the boss. However, he thought that if the boss wanted to see Soraya, nothing could change his mind. But now, for more than 10 days, he had been sitting in this shop every night, watching her leave without any intention of meeting her. She doesn't want her family to know about us. Otherwise, the Thunder Corporation people would have come to settle accounts. He understood her thinking. Realizing the meaning behind his words, Kai's eyes widened. The head of the Noah cartel, a figure feared across Asia's underworld, cared so much about a woman's thoughts? If I appear now, it will definitely cause her trouble. She'll be unhappy again. Suddenly, a doting smile appeared in his eyes. Tommy, you're really infatuated with her. Kai couldn't believe the unfamiliar smile in his eyes. So, you must never doubt her importance to me. He spoke casually. If one day you have to choose between the Noah cartel and her, then I have responsibilities to the Noah cartel. He didn't say much and silently watched the departing car. His answer made Kai noticeably relieved. Even the slightest sound of breathing, the tiniest change, still affected Tommy's feelings and mood. Slowly, he turned around. But Kai... His eyes were cold, and his words were icy. Even so, I will never allow any harm to come to her. Otherwise, anyone who touches her will die. In an instant, the sharp, cold light from his eyes shocked Kai to the core. Standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window in the secretary's office at Thunder Corporation, Soraya coldly looked out at the sky. Although she couldn't fully forget the cold, domineering eyes that often echoed in her mind, she sincerely wished that Tommy had never existed in this world. She hoped he would never disturb her life again and worked hard to make her days run normally. But the pressure hidden in her heart kept her from sleeping well, and her mental state deteriorated. She didn't know how long she could keep this up, but she had to persevere. Rubbing her forehead, she took a deep breath, turned back to her desk, pulled out her chair, and sat down. She opened the files on her desk and continued the work she had paused earlier. 30 minutes later, she stood up, gathered the sorted documents, and quickly walked out of the office to the president's office. Knock, knock, knock. She raised her hand and knocked on the door before entering. President. Wait. The president of Thunder Corporation, who was on the phone by the window, signaled for her to be quiet as soon as he saw her. I know, I'll ask her in a moment. Don't wear yourself out. His eyes were gentle as he spoke on the phone. Don't worry. It's no problem. See you tonight. He hung up the phone and looked at her. My little sister. Jacob wants me to ask you. Noticing her pale face, the tall and handsome Sonny frowned and walked over to her. What's wrong? You look terrible. Are you feeling unwell? Sonny reached out to touch her forehead. Are you coming down with something? Since Soraya's sudden disappearance and unexpected return over a month ago, the family had finally been able to sleep peacefully, letting go of the worry hidden in their hearts. But seeing her unusual expression and wandering eyes, they were sure she had encountered trouble. They hoped she would explain everything voluntarily, but no matter how they pressed, she firmly refused to say a word. In the end, they could only assign people to protect her secretly to prevent similar incidents. In the past, he hadn't realized how much he cared about this sister, but after her disappearance, he and his brothers understood. Until someone could replace their brotherly bond, she would always be their beloved sister. It's nothing, just a bit tired from work. Tired? I'll take you to the hospital for a checkup. He turned to grab the car keys from the desk. Brother, I'm fine. She declined politely. It's better to get checked out at the hospital. He wasn't reassured. I'm really fine. Why go to the hospital? Besides, don't forget, President, you have a meeting at 10. She smiled as she reminded him. Are you sure you're okay? He frowned at her. I'm fine, 100% fine. She smiled and nodded. All right. Remembering Soraya's independent nature, he could only trust her. Checking the time, Sonny walked out of the office with her. By the way, Jacob wanted me to ask if you could come home this Friday. Home? Is something going on? She turned and raised an eyebrow at her handsome brother. Is something going on? What kind of question is that? Sonny pretended to be angry and knocked her on the head. Ouch! Brother! Why are you hitting me? Soraya quickly moved away from him. Who told you to ask a stupid question? He tugged at her hair. Haven't you realized you haven't been home in a while? Mom, Dad, and your sisters-in-law miss you. Can't you come home to see them? Does something have to be going on for you to come home? Brother. Stop it. I'll go home. She hurriedly tried to save her hair. Good. I'll call Jacob and tell him. Sonny released her hair with satisfaction. Let me call him. You have a meeting to attend. Fine. Suddenly, Sonny looked at her hesitantly. Is there anything else? Soraya quickly tried to step aside but was pulled back by him. My little sister, I want you to know that no matter what happens, our family will always stand by you. So if something is wrong, you must tell us. Brother, this isn't like you. Guessing what he wanted to say, Soraya raised an eyebrow. Not like me. I've never seen you this concerned about me before, she teased. Let's say I've had a change of heart. All right? Sonny glared at her with a smile. Yes. All four of you have had a change of heart simultaneously. Soraya couldn't help but shake her head with a smile. What, you used to complain that we didn't treat you well enough, and now you think we're too attentive. Don't be ungrateful. Sonny rolled his eyes and pulled her into his arms. Hey, brother. Stop it. She frowned in protest and pushed his hands away. If others see us, they'll think we're not serious at work. How can we lead by example then? See, that's your problem. You're always so stern with men. I'm your brother, but if it were someone else, you'd scare them away. Sonny let her go with a look of displeasure. She paused, then smiled. So what? Her beautiful face broke into an indifferent smile. Over the years, her position as the future successor of Thunder Corporation had scared away many suitors. If not for Tommy's appearance, she might still be a virgin. Suddenly, The image that surged into her mind made her expression change. What's wrong? Is something the matter? Noticing her change in expression, Sunny asked curiously. No, nothing. Suppressing her restless heart, Soraya forced a smile and urged him. You should go to your meeting. All right. Don't forget to call Jacob. Don't worry. I won't forget. Knowing that continuing to talk would make him late, Sunny turned and quickly walked toward the meeting room. After successfully avoiding Sunny's concern and questioning, Soraya let out a sigh of relief. But she really shouldn't be thinking about him again. Frowning slightly and pressing her red lips together, Soraya, in a foul mood, turned and walked towards the hall window. She opened the window, letting in gusts of cold wind. She looked at the distant horizon and took deep breaths of the icy air. She hoped the cold wind would calm her down and help her stop thinking about the past. Friday came quickly, and after a busy day, Soraya felt exhausted. Putting down her pen, she closed her eyes and leaned back in her chair, lightly rubbing her forehead. She wanted to go straight home after work to rest, but she hadn't forgotten that she promised Sunny a few days ago to visit their parents and sisters-in-law. My little sister, it's time to go. As soon as work was over, Sunny appeared at her office door. Okay. She quickly tidied her desk, grabbed her purse, and went downstairs with him. She thought she had really overlooked her family's concern for her and believed her parents and sisters-in-law just wanted to see her. But when she got home, she realized that her family had planned a surprise birthday party for her, which was why Sunny had tricked her into coming. She happily enjoyed the birthday dinner prepared by her sisters-in-law and accepted the big red envelopes from her parents and brothers. The entire evening, she laughed as her usually tough brothers chased and played with the children running around the house. Being with her parents, sisters-in-law, and brothers made her feel very happy and blessed. After a warm and joyful evening, Soraya stood up, seeing it was already past 10 o'clock. I should head back. She walked out to the parking area and turned to see the 4 brothers who had followed her out. Brothers, you should go back inside. Seeing her parents and sisters-in-law standing on the steps of the hall, and her brothers in front of her, Soraya knew they were worried about her going alone. My little sister, it's late. Why not stay the night? Sunny suggested. Brother, did you forget I recently got a cat? I don't want it to starve. She smiled, declining. My little sister, don't worry. It's just a few meals. It won't die. If necessary, Ryder can give it some nutrition shots later. Ryder, the second brother, said with a refined smile, running a hand through his short hair. Ryder, when did your Kaido hospital become a vet clinic? She retorted coldly. This? Ryder's face changed slightly, caught off guard. Soraya, Ryder is just concerned about you. Worried it's not safe for you to go out alone at night. Chester, the third brother, chimed in with a smile. Leifachi, I know you all mean well, but you can't guard me 24/7, can you? Why don't you go back and spend more time with your wives and stop worrying about me? Soraya, we have. Chester began to say they had people secretly protecting her. Brother? She cut him off, her beautiful face showing determination. No matter what you think, I'm an adult now, not a little girl anymore. Otherwise, you stay here, and I'll take care of your cat. The fourth brother, Elliot, offered loyally. No! Soraya's eyes widened in shock, shaking her head. No? My little sister, I'm a grown man willing to take care of your cat. Don't be so difficult, Elliot said, glaring at her. Last time you said that, I let you take care of it. But when I came back the next day, you had tied my cat up like a dog, and it ended up with a broken bone, she accused sharply. The other 3 brothers turned to Elliot in shock. Fian, what did you do? Why didn't you tell us? Ryder asked, eyes wide. I didn't do it on purpose. It was an accident, Elliot said, his face reddening. An accident? Humph. Soraya snorted coldly, turning away from him. She opened the car door, sat in the driver's seat, and started the engine. Then let me go, said Sunny, Ryder, and Chester in unison. Thanks, but no thanks. I don't have much faith in you guys. She still shook her head, declining. That's it. Goodbye. She waved and shifted gears, stepping on the gas to quickly leave her family behind. She wanted to stay and enjoy the warmth and harmony of family, but she didn't want them to keep treating her like a child. Thinking she was still the Thunder Corporation's little sister who hadn't grown up, she hoped that one day she could just be an ordinary woman. Chapter 5. Back at her apartment in Bunkyo Building, Soraya took out the key card from her purse and swiped it to open the door. As soon as she stepped into the entryway, she was suddenly enveloped in a tight hug from behind, shocking her. Her eyes widened in panic as she struggled to break free. "Let go of me! Help!" she screamed, trying to call for help through the still open door. With a bang, the door was slammed shut by her assailant. In the darkness, she was forced to turn around. Her face lifted, and in the next moment, her lips, slightly parted from calling for help, were seized in a cold kiss. The familiar scent and aggressive kiss stunned her, and she opened her eyes wide in surprise, staring at the man in the darkness. "Tommy, I missed you." He put down the items he was holding and cupped her face tightly. "You!" She pushed him away with all her strength. Once free, she pressed the light switch on the wall beside her. Click! The room was suddenly illuminated, clearly showing Tommy's intense, passionate eyes. "How did you get in? Did anyone see you?" she asked angrily, her face flushed. "After so long, the only thing you care about is who saw me?" He stood rigidly, his expression dark as he stared at her. Are you still trying to oppose me? Don't you understand your current position? You shouldn't be here." She clenched her fists and glared at him. "Shouldn't be here?" He narrowed his eyes coldly and reached out, pulling her back into his embrace. "I've told you, in this world, there is no place where I, Tommy, shouldn't be. It's only about where I want to be. You? And remember, you are my woman, so where you are, I will be," he declared coldly. "You?" She thought she had escaped him and no longer interested him. But now, seeing the dangerous look in his eyes, Soraya realized she had underestimated his determination to have her. "What do you want?" "It's not about what I want, but about what you want from me." "What do you mean? Do you want me to leave quietly, letting those plainclothes security guards downstairs inform Sunny about my visits to you? Or will you accept everything?" "Plainclothes security?" She was stunned. "Don't you know how troublesome your brothers are?" He sneered. So it was her brothers who had hired people to protect her, allowing her to live peacefully all this time? But Soraya frowned at him. He didn't seem like the kind of person who would care about such things, so why was he only appearing now? "I guess you don't want your family to know about me." Without her asking, Tommy gave her the answer. "You." His answer surprised Soraya. "So what will it be?" He walked into the living room, leaving her standing in the entryway. He looked around her simply furnished apartment. The soft pastel colors and simple layout made her place very feminine, starkly different from where he lived. Walking through the living room, he saw 3 rooms. The first was her bedroom, the second was a study, and the third was a guest room. Opposite the guest room was a dining room connected to the kitchen. To him, this nearly 50-square-meter apartment seemed too big for one person but just right for 2. Back in the living room, he saw she was still standing there, unmoving. Tommy frowned slightly. "Don't you get it yet?" He frowned, looking at her face, even more cold and beautiful than he remembered. She pressed her lips together and said nothing. "I can compromise, not make things difficult for you, and let you continue living like this, but you can no longer reject me. You must accept my presence and everything that comes with it." Seeing the unwillingness and unspoken anger in her eyes, Tommy's thin lips curled slightly. "I've given you over a month to adjust, and my patience is limited, so don't try to play tricks on me. Now you have 2 options. 1, I go straight to Thunder Corporation and announce that you are my woman. 2, I stay as your secret lover." Though he spoke of making concessions, his eyes remained arrogant. She didn't believe he would really go against Thunder Corporation for her, for any woman. Men like him, deeply involved in the underworld, would never truly love a woman or sacrifice everything for one. Besides, brothers who fought together were more important than women, so she chose a third option: gambling. I have two options for you too. She raised her head proudly, looking him in the eye. First, disappear from my sight, and I'll pretend nothing happened. Oh, and the second option? Tommy looked at her with a slight interest, raising an eyebrow. The second option is still to disappear from my sight, or else don't blame Thunder Corporation for using its power against you. At that point, the Noah cartel will be flattened, without even a window left. She sneered. You? Her words surprised him. No matter what, I'm still part of Thunder Corporation. My brothers would never let me be oppressed by you. If they find out, they'll fight for me and destroy you. To suppress him and gain his trust, Soraya raised her chin confidently. But she couldn't fool him. A faint, almost invisible smile appeared on his lips. I like you like this, he said, genuinely admiring her cold arrogance. You? She was taken aback. However, since we can't agree, I'll have to get your brothers involved. Smiling, he walked to the coffee table, leaned over, and pressed the speakerphone button on the phone, dialing a number he had memorized. Soraya stared at him in shock. Who was he calling? My little sister. The voice that suddenly echoed through the living room made Soraya's face turn pale, her eyes wide in shock. Before Tommy could speak, she rushed to the phone, picked up the receiver, and canceled the speaker setting. She stared at Tommy, who had been pushed a few steps away, with deep, profound amusement on his face. He really called Thunder Manor. Soraya looked at him in disbelief, no longer thinking he was joking or just trying to scare her. She now understood him on a deeper level. He truly surprised her. Ryder just asked why you haven't called to check in. If you were a second later, your third brother Chester would have gone out looking for you. The voice from the other end of the line brought her back to reality. Taking a deep breath, she calmed her racing heart and tried to sound normal. Brother, I'm sorry for making you worry. It's okay, as long as you're safe at home. Brother. She heard the gentle voice of her sister-in-law, Jacob, in the background. My little sister, Jacob wants you to check all the doors and windows before you go to bed. Sonny repeated his wife's instructions with a laugh. I will. You all should get some rest. She smiled and hung up the phone. Looking at the phone, she smiled faintly. Her family cared deeply about her. She hoped she and her family could always live happily together. But, looking up at Tommy standing in front of her, Soraya's smile faded away. She couldn't fight him, nor could she fool him. She cared about her family and didn't want Thunder Corporation to get involved with the underworld because of her, giving their business rivals a chance to tarnish its reputation. But he didn't worry about anything. He didn't even care that a conflict with Thunder Corporation could lead to mutual destruction. His desire for her heart was so steadfast, it made hers race. Looking at his cold and stern face, Soraya felt her heart inexplicably start to pound rapidly. She had never encountered a man as confident and imposing as he was. Have you finally realized I'm not joking? He noticed the change in her eyes. Staring silently at his imposing demeanor, Soraya didn't know how to react. She simply looked at him, as if trying to see into his heart. Looking directly into her clear, contemplative eyes, Tommy knew that the phone call just now had directly reached her heart. Now he just had to wait for her response. Stepping forward, he smiled and, like a king, extended his hand to her. Come here. Soraya stood still, her brows tightly knitted as she struggled internally. Noticing her emotional turmoil, Tommy's smile remained unchanged as he walked toward her. But with each step he took forward, she took a step back, until her back was against the wall. His dark eyes gleamed as he stared intently at her. Suddenly, he reached past her, picking up the item he had previously discarded on the shelf, and handed it to her. For you. You. Recognizing the distinctive packaging of the luxury brand, Soraya looked at him in surprise. Happy birthday. Looking into her bright black eyes, he leaned in to kiss her soft lips. The unexpected forward blessing made Soraya's eyes widen in surprise. He knew today was her birthday. Soraya watched in astonishment as he unwrapped the package. Suddenly, A gleam of light caught her eye, drawing her gaze to the now opened black velvet box. Seeing him slowly take out a silver necklace, her expression became one of shock, her lips slightly parted. The silver necklace had a delicate, dazzling diamond pendant. It was the limited edition Morning Star that the luxury brand was set to launch next week. Although it hadn't officially been released yet, the advertisement had already made waves, and the limited edition Morning Star had been pre-ordered by many high-profile figures and socialites. Though she liked it, Sunny had beaten her to the last Morning Star, gifting it to Jacob for her birthday. But now, Soraya looked at him in disbelief. Raising his eyebrows, Tommy led her to the full-length mirror by the entrance, turned her around, and stood behind her to put the necklace on. Kissing her neck gently, Tommy looked at her dazed reflection in the mirror, his hand caressing her slender figure. "I knew you would like it the moment I saw it in the TV ad." "You? Why?" She blinked, snapping back to reality. She didn't know exactly what she wanted to ask him, but she knew he would give her an answer. "Because," holding her tightly against his chest, he looked into her confused eyes in the mirror and whispered softly into her ear, "Because I want to pamper you." Not wanting her personal matters to affect Thunder Corporation, Soraya could only choose Tommy's second option when faced with his strong personality. She understood he was the type of person who would rather break than bend. If someone went against his wishes, no one would have a good time. She wasn't the smartest woman, but she knew better than to provoke a deeply intense man. She had thought he would only occasionally come to see her, but to her surprise, he bought the apartment next door at a high price. She thought he wanted to live next to her, but after a few days, she realized he bought the apartment to make it easier to enter and leave the building. Despite moving in for some time, his apartment next door remained empty, without any of his personal belongings. But her place was filled with his things. He shared her bed, her room, and her wardrobe and lived in her space. Over time, she realized he genuinely cared about her and doted on her. To him, she wasn't just a woman with a powerful family. She was the only woman he wanted. He always did everything he could to get close to her heart and break down her last defenses. And as days went by, she stopped rejecting and resisting him. Though they were strangers in front of others, behind closed doors, he treated her with the gentleness and care of a husband. This side of him made her lower her guard and get used to his presence. One morning, just as she was about to leave for work, Tommy suddenly pulled her back. "Make sure to come back on time today. Is something going on?" His special request piqued her curiosity. "Just come back on time." He awkwardly pursed his lips and pushed her out the door to work. "But if something comes up at work," she turned to look at him. "Come back on time or don't go to work at all. Your choice." He cut her off, his tone firm. I'll be back on time." She feared he really wouldn't let her leave if she continued arguing. "Good. I'll be waiting for you to have dinner with me." Her agreement brought a smile to his face. After a full day of work, Soraya began tidying her desk as soon as the clock struck 5:30. "My little sister, are you getting off work?" Sunny asked, surprised, as he walked into her office. She used to work until late at night, but recently, she had been leaving on time. "Yeah." She looked slightly flustered. "You've been leaving work on time a lot lately. Is there something going on?" "No." Avoiding his probing gaze, she continued tidying her desk. "Lately, Secretary Lin has been helping out with a lot of things, so work has been much easier. Is there something you need, brother?" "Not really." Sunny smiled. "Your sister-in-law said she made your favorite food tonight and wants you to come home with me. I'll grab the cat, so you can stay home tonight and not have to rush back and forth." "No, that's not necessary." Thinking of Tommy at home, Soraya's expression changed slightly. "Not necessary? I'm not feeling well and just want to go home and rest." She couldn't meet his eyes. "Not feeling well? Then you need to see a doctor. Come on. I'll take you to Ryder's hospital." "Brother, I'm fine. I just need some sleep." "Is that so?" Sunny frowned, thinking, "No way, I still don't feel at ease. Let's go to your place to get the cat. And you can stay home tonight so I'll feel better." "Brother." She seemed to be making things worse. Worried that Sunny might actually go back to her place with her and afraid he'd notice something unusual, Soraya quickly thought on her feet. Brother, there's no need. My cat has been playing at the neighbor's place lately. They'll take care of it. In that case, let's go straight to Thunder Manor. Not giving her a chance to refuse, Sunny grabbed her hand and walked out of the office, taking the elevator directly to the underground parking lot. In the rush, Soraya managed to call Tommy, who was waiting for her to come home at the Wenjing building. My brother wants me to go to Thunder Manor. I won't be coming home tonight. No, come back. He gently stroked the cat in his arms, his voice cold. Tommy, I said no, and I mean it. His expression darkened as he glanced toward the dining room. The table was set with a candlelight dinner and a birthday cake he had ordered from a restaurant. But, hearing her hesitate again, Tommy became angry. Tonight, she had only one option. Come back immediately, he ordered, then hung up. An hour later, she still hadn't returned. His stern face was now covered with a layer of frost. Suddenly, his expression darkened, and he threw the cat from his lap. Meow! The cat bounced off the sofa and stood up. Its golden fur stood on end like a porcupine's quills. Baring its teeth and raising its claws, it hissed repeatedly at him. Meow! Meow! Get out! His eyes cold, he grabbed a pillow from the sofa and threw it at the cat with a thud. Meow! With a sharp cry, the cat quickly dodged and fled, retracting its claws. Narrowing his icy eyes, he glared at the cat hiding under the table. He didn't like cats, but for her he tried to take care of it. He could compromise for her, even acting as an underground figure, and he could give her absolute freedom. But she could never disregard his feelings like this. Picking up his phone from the coffee table, he coldly dialed her number. The melodic ringtone of the phone echoed again. Thunder Corporation's future heirs, who were having dinner and chatting in the hall, all turned to look at Soraya's silver phone on the table. Her phone had rung nearly 10 times that evening, making them all very curious. At this point, Bauer, the fourth sister-in-law, unable to contain her curiosity any longer, reached out excitedly. Soraya just went upstairs. Let me answer it for her. Don't touch it. Leah, who was closest to the phone, snatched it up before Bauer could. Hey, Leah, you... Bauer glared at her in frustration. This is a personal phone, you can't look at it. Smiling smugly, Leah turned to take the phone upstairs to Soraya. Suddenly, hurried footsteps came from upstairs. In a few seconds, Soraya appeared before them. The persistent ringtone made her heart race. Soraya, you seem really busy tonight. Leah smiled at her. Yeah. Feeling uneasy, she tried to take back her phone from the table. She had been so careless, forgetting to take her phone upstairs. She quickly walked to the table. The empty table made her panic. She distinctly remembered leaving it. Here it is, Leah said, smiling as she handed it to her. Oh, thank you. Taking her phone back, she sighed in relief, a smile on her face. Noticing her family staring at her, Soraya was slightly stunned. Is something wrong? My little sister. Why so many calls tonight? Elliot asked, full of curiosity. The melodic ringtone interrupted her. Excuse me, I need to take this call. Turning around, Soraya quickly went upstairs to her attic room. The incessant ringing of her phone had affected her mood. Back in her room, she closed the door to block out the noise. Pressing the call button, she brought the phone to her ear and heard his angry voice. I'll be there in 5 minutes. You come out right now. She walked to the balcony and looked at the night sky. Tonight, a cool breeze blew under a clear sky with a soft, glowing silver moon. You come out or I'll come in. Your choice. Do you really want me to choose? She didn't know how to calm his anger. Show me if you dare, he shouted angrily. Listening to his angry words, Soraya didn't know whether to laugh or be angry. Tommy, come out. Tommy, don't be like this. She didn't understand why he was so insistent and angry tonight. You promised you'd have dinner with me tonight. We have dinner together almost every day. This one time doesn't matter. Does it? You? His anger reaching its peak. Tommy was speechless and abruptly hung up the phone. She knew he was angry, but she wasn't panicked or worried. She believed he wouldn't really come to Thunder Manor to find her. He might have before, but not now. She believed he wouldn't make things difficult for her for no reason. Make things difficult for her for no reason? Soraya suddenly froze. If that were true, then why was he acting this way tonight? Chapter 6. At 11 o'clock at night, Soraya still used the cat as an excuse to leave Thunder Manor. Brother, thank you. Sunny, not comfortable with her going down the mountain so late, drove her to Wenjing Building. Your neighbor is really something, bothering you over such a small thing with constant calls. Brother, they're just being helpful. If you keep talking like this, no one will help me take care of the cat next time. She looked uneasy. All right then, I'll go up with you to thank them properly. He was about to get out of the car. Blocking his door, Soraya forced a smile. Brother, no need. It's already very late. You should go back or sister-in-law will worry. Well, looking at the building and then at her, Sunny frowned slightly. He always felt that Soraya had been acting strangely lately. My little sister, are you really all right? He asked, concerned. She paused for a moment and then smiled. Of course I'm fine. With you 4 men protecting me, what could possibly happen? Don't worry, I'm fine. Well, all right then. Seeing how late it was, Sunny finally nodded and drove away. As soon as his car was out of sight, Soraya quickly walked into the building and took the elevator upstairs. She took out her key card and swiped it through the door's recognition system before pushing the door open. As soon as she closed the door and turned around to turn on the lights, Soraya was stunned by the mess before her eyes. A burglar? Her heart jumped, and she turned to open the door to run out. But upon closer inspection, she realized the living room was just messy and not burgled. There were also about a dozen or 20 empty whiskey bottles scattered around. Tommy? She sighed, frowning as she started picking up the fallen cushions and empty bottles. Bang! Suddenly, a loud noise came from the bedroom. Hurrying to the bedroom, Soraya was shocked to see Tommy, holding a bottle, sitting amidst a pile of toppled or standing bottles. Why did you drink so much? Standing at the door, she frowned at him. Hearing her familiar voice, the drunken Tommy struggled to focus on the door. Soraya, you came back? Seeing her beautiful figure, his face lit up. He tried to stand up and lunged at her. Watch out! Soraya, almost knocked over by him, supported him with a mix of frustration and amusement. I knew you still care about me, he slurred, hiccuping with a drunken grin. Drunk, he behaved unlike his usual cold self, laughing uncontrollably. He chuckled foolishly at her. What's going on with you today? Soraya struggled to get his tall body onto the bed. Why drink so much? You'll get drunk. The strong smell of alcohol made her frown. I was afraid of not getting drunk. Afraid I'd cause trouble for you. He laughed drunkenly. Tommy, but you came back for me. I knew you would. Excitedly, Tommy kissed her cheeks. Reaching behind her, he pulled down the zipper of her dress, trying to undress her. Hey, you're drunk. Soraya pushed him away, embarrassed and annoyed, re-zipping her dress. No, he hiccuped again. I'm not drunk. I'm very sober. Really? She shook her head with a helpless smile. A drunk person never admits they're drunk. Ugh! Another hiccup followed. So I'm drunk? Really drunk? Drunk on your beauty? His hands flailed as he laughed at her. You! Seeing him so drunk and rambling, Soraya felt she couldn't handle him. But knowing that even drunk, he still cared about her. Her lips curved into a faint smile. Was there something special today? Why did you insist I come back? She asked. Today is my birthday, so I wanted to spend it with you. He hugged her tightly, kissing her. Today is your birthday? She looked at him wide-eyed. But But you ignored me. You only care about your family, not my feelings, not my emotions. Soraya, it makes me so sad. Leaning on her, he suddenly started crying softly. His childlike crying left Soraya stunned. Tommy, I care about you so much. I see you as my only one. Why don't you feel the same? Why do you ignore me for them? Seeing him with drunk eyes and hearing his drunk words, Soraya felt both shocked and touched. I know. Your family can't accept me, but I don't care, I just want you. Grabbing another bottle, he took another swig. Tommy, as long as you care about me a little, I don't care. I can ignore them. He grabbed her hand, wiping the alcohol from his lips. Yeah. She always knew how he felt about her, but she didn't realize how genuine he was. But you. Suddenly, his eyes filled with anger as he took another swig. His overly emotional state made his whole body tremble. Although drunk, he tried to control his excitement. He didn't want to hurt her, but the anger burning inside him felt like it was going to consume him. He stood up angrily, his drunken eyes cold, and threw the bottle at the corner of the wall. Crash! The bottle shattered, whiskey splattering everywhere. Tommy? Why do you treat me like this? Haven't I been good enough to you? He roared. Tommy, you. His rage startled her. For you, I can even disobey my brothers. For you, I can severely punish those who have followed me for decades. So why don't you care about me? He grabbed her, tightly squeezing her shoulders, shaking her violently. Tell me, what should I do to make you understand that I am also a person, a living, breathing person? Suddenly, his anger vanished, and he stared at her with drunken eyes. No, I'm not a living person. I'm just existing. Suddenly, he grabbed a bottle from the floor, opened it, and chugged it down. I've never lived. I've only existed. After a long time, his weak, repeated drunk words came out along with the alcohol dribbling from his mouth. Tommy, you're drunk. No, I'm not. I know it's night. He turned to the dark outside the window. I've always existed in the shadows, breathing silently. The night is me, and you are my only daylight. As if all his strength had been drained, he collapsed onto the bed, looking lost. No wonder you never cared about my feelings. Lowering his head, he gave a bitter smile. Someone like me, who brings misfortune, has no right to celebrate a birthday. You not wanting to come back is understandable. I'm sorry, I didn't know. Seeing him so dejected and sad, Soraya's heart ached a little. Let's celebrate your birthday now, okay? She tried to cheer up, smiling at him. No need to force it. I've never celebrated before and I don't need to now, but... He lifted his drunken eyes to look at her. Just because I'm the king, you can't love me? Is that it? She bit her lip. Actually, I wish. I wasn't part of the cartel, wasn't the king, wasn't in the mafia, but I can't help it. His drunken eyes still held a glimmer of clarity. Why? You can turn back. You don't have to. She forgot he was drunk and tried to persuade him earnestly. Do you know what it means to be a part of the underworld? To be unable to control your fate? He suddenly laughed. It's not like that. If you have the will, you can leave like Leah did with the Noah cartel. Leah? Ha! His drunken laugh echoed. If it wasn't for my grandfather stepping in to repay Ryder, your second brother, for saving his life, Leah would have been long gone from this world. I might as well tell you, my grandfather was a big shot in Kaohsiung. My dad was an arms dealer in the US before he died, and my mom was a feared crime boss. With a background like that, who would believe I could be a good person? Soraya suddenly fell silent. His upbringing had shaped him into who he was. Lightly pursing her lips, she took the bottle from his hand, helped him lie down, and covered him with a blanket. If I could be a president or an angel, who would want to be a thug or a devil? Looking at her silent face, he smiled helplessly. His words made her heart ache. Don't think about it anymore. Just sleep. Soraya, why didn't I meet you sooner? He sighed as he looked at her. If I'd met you as a child, maybe you could have pulled me out. Maybe I wouldn't have met my godfather, wouldn't have joined the Noah cartel. What would you have done then? What would I have done? I think I would have joined Thunder Corporation, then taken out all the men who had designs on you and found a way to make you mine, to be my only one. With a turn, he drunkenly lay on her lap, looking at her reflection in the vanity mirror. You! His words made her want to laugh, but she couldn't. He was so used to the life of the underworld. His thoughts and actions were those of a mafia brother. Okay. Sleep now, stop talking. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she lightly patted his back, trying to soothe him to sleep. Soraya, never leave me, and don't make me angry again. Can you leave the Noah cartel for me? Though she knew it was a fantasy, she still hoped. If he could leave the underworld, their obstacles would be greatly reduced. Then, she could walk with him in the sunlight, no longer avoiding her family. She believed that if he could leave the mafia and live a normal life, her family would accept him just like they accepted Leah. But, I'm sorry. Turning to face her, his eyes, which had already engraved her beauty into his heart, held her gaze. In this moment he seemed sober. At his words, her eyes darkened, her shoulders slumped. You! Was he really drunk? If he was drunk, why wouldn't he even humor her once? Forcing his intoxicated eyes open, he seemed to see the sorrow in her eyes and hear the voice in her heart. He sighed softly. I can't betray my godfather's dying wish, nor can I abandon the brothers who fought alongside me, lived and died with me. Closing his eyes, his murmurs faded away. That night, Soraya felt she understood him more, but she never brought up that night again. Nor did she ask him to leave the Noah cartel again. It was as if she wanted to forget all their problems. Because she knew he could never let her go in this life, and she seemed unable to leave him either, especially when she remembered what he said on his birthday night. Her heart ached. I am not a living person. I am just existing. I have never lived. I just exist. I have always existed in the shadows, always breathing silently. I seem like the night. No wonder you never care about my feelings. Someone like me who brings bad luck to others. How could I have the right to celebrate a birthday? Do you know what it means to be a part of the underworld, to be unable to control your fate? If I could be a president or an angel, who would want to be a thug or a devil? Every time she remembered his words from that night, her heart felt like it was being pricked by needles, hurting. She thought she wouldn't like him, but after hearing his drunken words, she couldn't help but step closer to him. She also thought Tommy would be angry for a long time because she didn't celebrate his birthday. But he wasn't. Every morning when he woke up, he still habitually kissed her and sent her off to work. But seeing him like this, hiding all his dissatisfaction and resentment towards her in his heart, made her heart ache again. She hoped he wouldn't be so good to her anymore, but he continued to ignore her cold reactions, doing what he wanted to do, loving her unconditionally, pampering her. He always held her in his arms, watching TV or listening to music with her. Even without speaking, she could feel the gentleness he had only for her. Gradually, she, who rarely cooked at home, started going into the kitchen more often. Now, every morning she prepared breakfast for both of them, which they used to get separately outside. Even after work, she would make dinner instead of ordering takeout, and he would always stand silently in a corner of the kitchen, frowning but seriously watching her every move. Just like now, leaning quietly in a corner of the kitchen, Tommy frowned as he watched her deftly chop vegetables for the stir-fry. Her sudden change made him suspect she was sick. Are you sick? His sudden question startled her, and she accidentally cut her finger. Ouch! She lightly frowned and put down the knife. Seeing this, Tommy quickly stepped forward. Noticing the blood dripping from her left index finger, his frown deepened. He pulled her hand under the faucet to quickly rinse the wound. Where's the first aid kit? Seeing his frowning face, a slight smile appeared on Soraya's lips. Turning around, she walked to the living room and took out a white first aid kit from a low cabinet. Opening the box, she took out a Band-Aid and was about to apply it. Not yet. He shook his head. Taking out tweezers, iodine, and cotton from the box, Tommy carefully cleaned her wound with a focused expression. As he quickly and skillfully disinfected, applied medicine, and bandaged her wound, Soraya quietly watched him. His cold face showed no smile, but he always took care of her with his actions. It seemed that no matter where or when, as long as he was by her side, she could feel the gentleness in his heart. After finishing with the wound, Tommy took the band-aid from her hand and applied it for her. After putting the first aid kit back in its place, Tommy turned around to see Soraya still sitting on the sofa, staring at him. What's wrong? Lately, she had been staring at him more often. And nothing. Blushing, she quickly stood up and walked to the kitchen. What's going on with you lately? Did I say something that night? Tommy finally voiced his concerns. Remembering his birthday night, he worried that he might have said something he shouldn't have due to being drunk. He regretted drinking too much that night. That night? No. She smiled faintly, picked up the knife, and tried to continue chopping the vegetables. But he took the knife from her hands. Really nothing? He didn't believe her. But what could he do? Taking up the knife, he deftly chopped the vegetables, surprising Soraya. You can do this? She looked at him standing close behind her. Yes. What else can you do? She was curious. She didn't expect such a man to handle a kitchen knife so skillfully. Everything you can, except having children. He glanced at her while saying this casually. Can you knit sweaters and crochet scarves too? She asked playfully as she moved away from his embrace. Do you need me to make one for you? He gave her a sidelong glance as he put the vegetables in the pan. Suddenly, she laughed. Seeing her beautiful smile, Tommy was momentarily stunned. She had indeed been different lately, often staring at him and smiling more. Though I like your cold demeanor, I love seeing you smile more, he said while stirring the vegetables. You have a beautiful smile. Thank you. She blushed. He always complimented her directly, always letting her know how much he liked her. But watching him, tall and handsome, doing incongruous kitchen tasks, she couldn't help but laugh again. Is it that funny? Seeing the amusement in her eyes, his expression darkened. He liked her smile, but he didn't want to be her joke. Frowning, he considered handing the kitchen duties back to her. Noticing her finger wound, he bit back his words. Understanding his intent, she smiled and reached out to take over. Never mind, I'll do it. He shook his head and continued making their dinner. In no time, dishes of stir-fried morning glory, cabbage, pan-fried tofu, basil clams, and winter melon ginger soup were on the table. Worried about her injured finger, Tommy insisted she use a spoon, making Soraya glare at him for a full 30 seconds until he laughed. Stop glaring and eat, he chuckled, putting food on her plate, including clam meat. I only hurt my finger, not. She begrudgingly scooped some rice with the spoon. Say another word, and you won't even use a spoon, he playfully threatened. How am I supposed to eat then? She widened her eyes. I'll feed you. You're bullying me. She laughed and hit him playfully. Suddenly, her eyes widened. Tommy took her spoon, scooped some food, and held it out to her. Eat, he commanded. No. She tried to refuse, but he fed her the food. Her face turned red. You. Chewing the food, her heart felt surrounded by sweetness. Another bite. He offered another spoonful. Looking into his deep, gentle eyes, Soraya felt compelled to take it and chew slowly. This sweet, tender atmosphere extended their dinner by an hour. Your cooking is better than mine, she reluctantly praised while clearing the table. But I like eating what you cook. He smiled, taking the dishes to the sink. She smiled and asked, Where did you learn to do these things? Here. Here? What do you mean? She was puzzled. Watching you, he said simply. Watching her cook every day, he had easily picked up the skills. Are you very intelligent? She asked, turning to wash the dishes. Not really, he shrugged. An IQ of 180 wasn't something he cared about. He stopped her from touching the water and took over the dishes again. Tommy. Knowing she would protest, Tommy handed her a clean cloth and gave her the wet dishes to dry. Don't get your wound wet, It'll heal in a couple of days, he advised. How am I supposed to wash? Realizing her mistake, she blushed again. I'll help you, he smiled. You? He kept making her blush and feel awkward. It's just a small cut. Do you have to baby me this much? This isn't babying you. It's spoiling you. He leaned in and kissed her, continuing to wash the dishes. You! Don't ask why I like spoiling you. He turned to her. Because you already know why. So, whether you like it or not, I'll always treat you this way. He paused. Even if I'm a psychological burden, even if you're tired of me, it won't change. He wanted to spoil her, make her happy, and see her smile. With her, he was just an ordinary man, not a feared mafia boss. I know, she nodded. She had known from the beginning that he was this kind of man. Strong and cold, but vulnerable in front of her, showing how important she was to him. Only, touching her chest, she felt her heart beating faster under his tender gaze. She seemed to be revealing her feelings for him too. Chapter 7. In order to further expand its influence in Asia and expedite the establishment of a luxury hotel in Thailand, Tommy immediately returned to the Noah cartel branch after telling Soraya he had something to attend to. Over the past month, he frequently traveled between Tokyo and Thailand, working overtime regularly, all in the hope of returning sooner to the place where she was. Finally, the final decision-making meeting was set for 1 o'clock in the afternoon. By 10 in the morning, high-ranking members of the Noah cartel had started to arrive at the Tokyo branch from all directions. After a short rest and having lunch, it was time for the meeting. Officials in charge of various projects brought detailed documents to present to Tommy, the supreme leader of the Noah cartel, for final confirmation. Although everyone was well-versed in setting up the luxury hotel, they remained cautious in front of the stern Tommy, fearing a mistake might provoke his wrath. However, within 5 minutes of the meeting, all attending officials noticed he was in an unusually good mood today. Unlike the usual cold and harsh atmosphere of past meetings, he appeared lively today, significantly reducing the pressure felt by the attendees. He decisively tackled the important issues raised by everyone, and the originally scheduled 3-hour meeting concluded successfully in just 2 hours. As everyone left the meeting room, only Diaz and Kai remained, staring at him. Seeing Tommy's recent frequent smiles, they exchanged glances, whispered a few words, and then turned back to watch him still immersed in work. Tommy, could you? Diaz leaned in with a smile, prompted by a $5,000 bet. Can't you see I'm busy? With a glance, Tommy pushed his face away. Despite his busyness, his thoughts remained with her. Thinking of her increasingly beautiful smiles before leaving Tokyo, a gentle smile appeared in his eyes. He would see her soon. Tommy. Kai seized the opportunity to approach him. However, he was met with a fierce glare from Tommy. What's going on with you two today? So noisy. Seeing Kai also bothering him, Tommy looked displeased and directly addressed the two who had been circling around him since morning. Are we noisy? Diaz pointed at Kai with wide eyes. Did I? Kai innocently slapped Diaz's hand away. If it's not you, then who? Of course not. Diaz grinned. It's just that you've been a bit strange lately, so we... Strange. Haven't you noticed you've been in an unusually good mood lately? My mood is good. What does it have to do with you? Or are you gambling on this again? Well, Diaz responded awkwardly. With a cold snort, he turned his head, not wanting to engage with the two, just eager to finish his work and go see her quickly. Seeing his expression, Diaz knew the bet with Kai was a draw this time. By the way, Tommy, Kai remembered a message he received at noon. What else do you want? Annoyed by the repeated interruptions, he was ready to explode. If you don't care about her safety, then I have nothing to say. Shrugging, Kai turned to leave the meeting room. Without needing further hints, Tommy connected the dots to Soraya. His eyes turned fierce. Enraged, he steadied himself on the conference table, flipped over, and swiftly approached Kai. Tommy! Diaz was shocked, hurrying forward to intercept him. Aware of the commotion behind him, Kai dodged quickly. As he turned, a fierce attack came straight at him. Kai quickly retreated several steps. Tommy, you want to attack her again? Under Diaz's intervention, Tommy grabbed Kai's collar, his narrow eyes hiding danger. It's not me, Kai protested angrily. He had already clearly stated that anyone who moved against her would die. Without his command, how could he possibly act against her? Not you. Tommy frowned, releasing his grip. I got a message at noon that Scarface Billy, out of revenge for you taking over his territory, plans to take it out on her. He straightened his collar and replied, How could he know about her? Didn't I tell you to keep it secret? He roared. Tommy, she is your acknowledged woman. Do you think it's possible to keep it from the gang brothers? He glared angrily. Tommy, Kai is right, Diaz chimed in. And even if this has not spread so far, one day Thunder Corporation will surely learn of her being with you. At that point, she will still have to make a choice between you and the Thunder Corporation. Kai nodded in agreement with Diaz. It's just a matter of time before it's exposed. You can't help her forever. Tommy, I think you should find time to talk to her properly, to mentally prepare her. Diaz's words were cut off by him. This is between her and me. You don't need to worry. As for Scarface Billy, is the source of the information reliable? Tommy switched topics, looking at the two. Recently, he had barely received any emotional response from Soraya, and certainly wouldn't discuss such a sensitive topic with her at this juncture. Yes, Kai nodded. It said he's been planning for months. He's got some nerve, knowing she's already mine, and still wants to mess with her? I think he's tired of living. His eyes narrowed dangerously. So, what's your take on this? Kai asked. Since the information is correct, then what are we waiting for? He turned back to the conference table, picked up the documents, and looked at Diaz. Tell Yusuf to raid Scarface Billy's last hideout. Yes. Receiving the order, Diaz quickly left the two and hurried out of the meeting room. Holding the documents, Tommy signaled Kai to follow. As they walked, he reviewed the files in his hand. Thank you. Following behind, Kai was surprised to hear this from Tommy. Tommy, are you talking to me? He asked uncertainly, stepping beside Tommy. What do you think? He glanced sternly. Tommy, you've really changed. Having known him for years, he had never been so polite. Tommy looked at him and smiled without speaking. He knew he had changed, and it was all because of her. To gain her acceptance and move their relationship forward, he did everything possible to get her to acknowledge their relationship. His demands of her were few, just a little tenderness amidst her coldness, a little consideration when silent, and he felt happy. Even if he could never win her heart or her love for a lifetime, it didn't matter, because all he wanted was to have her by his side during these dark days, to let him cherish his only woman like an ordinary man. So if this stable life was what she wanted, then he would do everything he could to maintain the status quo, not letting himself affect her other world, and most importantly, never allowing others to interfere his and her world. His narrowed eyes flashed with a deadly intent. Ding dong dong. The wall clock struck 6, signaling the hour. Already back at the Tokyo Tower and sitting in the lobby sofa watching the news, Tommy immediately stood up and looked down at the road below from the window. A few minutes passed, and a red car entered his view. He curved his lips upward. He wondered how she had been during his absence, if she had thought of him. Turning swiftly, Tommy strode through the lobby, heading towards the entrance, where he opened the door and stepped out. Usually, to avoid drawing attention from the neighbors, he would only open the door for her during fixed times. But today he was impatient to see her. At the elevator lobby, he took the elevator down to the underground parking lot. As soon as the elevator doors opened, he saw her red car pulling into its designated spot. Approaching her car, Tommy reached out to open the door for her. The sudden opening of the door made Soraya look up in surprise. A flash of joy entered her eyes. You're back. Seeing her beautiful face again and catching a glint of joy in her eyes, Tommy bent down and kissed her lips, which he had longed for. He explored her mouth with his tongue, seeking the tenderness and sweetness he desired, savoring her warm and slippery tongue. You. She didn't expect him to be so direct, and a blush colored her cheeks. I missed you. Leaving her lips, he gazed at her. I know. She lowered her eyelashes, hiding her bright black eyes. Even though he had been gone for over a month, her feelings for him had never faded. In fact, she had missed him, wondering when the suddenly vanished him would reappear. You. He thought she would respond similarly, but he was disappointed. She said nothing more, only replied lightly that she knew. Standing upright, Tommy silently took the items she had purchased from the grocery store from her hands. Thank you. Nodding, he intentionally kept a distance from her to avoid drawing attention from any neighbors who might suddenly appear. But today, Tommy noticed she stayed close to him the entire time. His thick eyebrows arched high. Seeing him looking at her, Soraya awkwardly turned her head away, pretending not to notice, but quietly reached out and tugged at his clothes as they walked together. You. Her actions made Tommy stop in surprise. Seeing him halt, her cheeks flushed again. Letting go of his clothes, she wanted to hurry into the elevator. Realizing he almost missed something important, Tommy frowned and reached out to pull her close to him. You. She blushed, appearing somewhat nervous. You were the one who grabbed my clothes, and besides, there's no one here. In private, he allowed himself to walk with her like this outside. Glancing at her, Tommy looked confident and proud, carrying the heavy items with one hand and holding her tightly with the other, striding towards the open elevator that lay ahead. Perhaps she hadn't responded to him in kind, nor had she said she missed him, but, turning to look at her beautiful face, which showed slight unease and was glancing around, his deep eyes held an unconcealable tenderness. He knew he was getting closer to her heart. Lately, her usually cold face had shown a few faint smiles. Though not many, they were captivating. None of her colleagues at the company knew what had changed, and neither did anyone at Thunder Corporation, as she always smiled without giving an answer whenever asked. Soraya hoped that her days could continue to pass peacefully like this in the future. However, not long after, she found her physical condition changing. Recently, she had been easily tired and experiencing morning sickness, which significantly affected her mood. Initially, she thought it was just a bad stomach and didn't pay much attention. But when she remembered her loss of appetite, deteriorating spirit, and late menstrual cycle, an uneasiness enveloped her. In the afternoon, after finishing some important documents, she took 2 hours off for personal leave and called Tommy to inform him she would be home later. She planned to visit a gynecology clinic to clear her doubts. After both had taken contraceptive measures, she shouldn't be pregnant, nor could she be. She hoped everything was just a coincidence, or else such a variable would only make her future unpredictable. To avoid attracting attention and not letting the future heir of Thunder Corporation notice, Soraya ensured she had shaken off the undercover security trailing her vehicle before heading to the obstetric clinic located between her company and Bunkyo building to register for an appointment. After answering all the questions from the female doctor, she underwent a detailed examination. Eager to confirm her suspicions were unfounded, she patiently waited in a corner of the clinic. Her red lips pressed tightly together. She clasped her hands in front of her chest, repeatedly telling herself in her heart that she wasn't pregnant. His appearance had already disrupted her life's rhythm, and now she couldn't accept another unexpected event. Suddenly, a ringtone played from her phone. Hello. She took out her phone from her purse and pressed the answer button. Upon hearing her voice, a relieved sigh came from the other end of the line. It was Sunny, who had been informed by the plainclothes security that they had lost her track. My little sister, where are you now? Sunny asked unhappily. I'm still out. Is there something wrong? No, it's just... Brother, I'm fine, don't worry. I'll be home soon. Well, all right, remember to call me when you get home. Okay? Yes. Ending the call with Sunny, she placed her phone back into her purse. Looking around at the pregnant women around her, each with loving expressions on their faces, Soraya turned away and looked out the window at the setting sun. She lowered her eyes and quietly waited until the sun set. It grew dark, and the streetlights turned on. Soraya, A nurse came out of the consultation room, calling out her name loudly. Hearing her name, she stood up and walked into the consultation room. She pressed her red lips tightly and sat down in front of the female doctor, who was around 40 or 50 years old. In fact, without the doctor needing to say anything more or looking at any detailed examination reports, from the doctor's eyes, she already knew the result. "How old are you?" the doctor asked with a faint smile. "Congratulations. It's already 1.5 months along." Seeing her smile, the doctor, who had been worried about her unmarried status, relaxed. 1.5 months? She realized she was indeed pregnant. Her smile slowly faded. Backtracking the timeline, she knew this child must have been conceived the night Tommy suddenly vanished and then reappeared. That night, he seemed to be making up for the lost month, continuously seeking her out the entire night, to the point where their contraceptive measures were ineffective, and the room's supply of condoms ran out. She had thought that things wouldn't be so coincidental that just one night wouldn't result in an accident. "Is it a boy or a girl?" she asked softly, coming back to her senses. "The fetus is still too small to tell." The doctor smiled warmly. "I see." She looked pensive, lowering her head as if disappointed. "These next 2 months are critical. You need to be especially careful about many things." The doctor wanted to warn her. "Critical period?" She looked up at the doctor. "I would usually advise against any strenuous activities during this period," I said. "So the baby would be lost?" she casually asked, looking out the window. "Not necessarily, but it's risky. If you want to keep this baby, you should remind your boyfriend." "Is that so?" Her mind drifted away from the doctor's advice as she gazed blankly at the sky outside. Earlier, when she left the office, the sky was bright and blue, but now it had darkened. As the car entered the underground parking of Bunkyo building, she spotted him waiting at the elevator. Looking at him, a smile flickered in her eyes. Even in casual wear, his tall, imposing figure and stern demeanor were impossible to overlook. This man, the father of her child. What's wrong? Tommy noticed her unusual expression as he opened the car door for her. "Nothing," she replied, shaking her head as she got out and closed the door. Holding his arm, Soraya walked slowly with him towards the elevator. Suddenly, she paused, her gaze fixed on the arm she was holding. She couldn't remember when it became so natural for her to hold him like this, no longer concerned about being seen by neighbors. It seemed she had grown accustomed to this, to walking with him and returning upstairs together. Slowly shifting her gaze, she looked up at his stern face. He had unknowingly influenced her actions and changed her world. Should she tell Tommy about her pregnancy? How would he feel if he knew he was going to be a father? Would he be happy? She thought he would. After all, he cared so much for her, pampered and cherished her. He must have some anticipation for their child. But should she keep this baby? Looking at the dominant man right in front of her, Soraya's eyes showed confusion and hesitation. "Good," he simply said, looking into her dark eyes. He knew she wasn't telling the truth and that she had deliberately shaken off the Thunder Corporation's guards assigned to protect her when she left the office. Even his own men had been successfully shaken off. If not for her earlier message that she would be late, he might have been frantic before her arrival. "Remember, if anything happens, you must tell me. Don't keep it to yourself, okay?" he reiterated. Soraya knew he was worried, but, gazing into his gentle eyes, she neither nodded nor shook her head, nor spoke. She just smiled faintly at him. Lowering her eyes and head, her smile carried a hint of sadness. What could she tell him? That she wanted to abort his child? That she couldn't let her child grow up with a father from a criminal background like him? That she feared her child would end up entangled in a life of crime like him? No, she couldn't tell him anything. His stubbornness would never allow him to agree to abort their child.